In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to select layers in the timeline panel, move them around, and trim them, and also how to trim layers inside the footage panel before you add them to the timeline panel. So to follow along, go to Working Files, open up After Effects Projects, and double-click on 0406 Selecting and Moving. We have a project here with 8 assets, 5 JPEG files, and 3 MPEG files. We're going to work with them in separate groups. So the first order of business is to arrange them by clicking on the type column header there. Now I've got all the JPEGs together and all the MPEGs together. I want to create a comp from the 5 JPEG files. So I need to select all 5. I'll click on the top one and shift click here on the 5th one to select those 5 contiguous files. And now I'm going to drag them all down to the new comp icon there. We'll see what happens when I do that. We're getting this dialog box that says new composition from selection. Do you want to make a single comp or do you want to make multiple comps because you have multiple files selected? We're going to go with single comp here. Have 5 seconds duration for the 5 images, and we will not sequence the layers. It'll just be a 5-second comp here by the time we're done. Click OK. And there are those 5 JPEG files, all stacked one upon the other. So what happens is that the abstract waves JPEG file is the only one that's visible because it's on top. It's covering up what's below it. If I turn off its eyeball, you can see what's below it there, the plates or the bowls. Click away that, turn off that eyeball, and there you can see that glass. Down below, nebula, down to the Tiffany glass. Now you might notice that the Tiffany glass is a little bit shorter than the comp. That's because the abstract waves layer right there is 36 by 2400, but the Tiffany glass is not quite as tall. It's 3600 by 2182. If you look at the nebula, I'll click on it so you can see its bounding box. It's a little bit taller, right? And it's not 2400 tall, it is 2488. What I want to do off the bat here is select these 2 layers on the bottom and have them fit the comp. I'm doing this not so much to show you how to fit things to comps, but to show you how to select things. So I'll click on this first one like that, and then I'll shift click on the next one because they're contiguous to select 2 layers, or I can click on one and control or command click, or I can marquee select by dragging here and selecting those 2. Now that they're selected, I'll right-click on them, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that will affect both of them at once. And this happens a lot in After Effects. You select multiple layers and have something happen to all of them at the same time. So in this case, I'm going to go to Transform, because I'm going to change the size of it, and Transform is where you change the size of things, and go down to Fit to Comp. And now they've just been adjusted to fit to the comp. The nebula has been knocked down a little bit, so it's not quite as tall, and the Tiffany glass has grown up a little bit. Now it's taller to fit the comp. All right, what I want to do now is turn on all the eyeballs. I can just click here and drag, and that'll turn all the eyeballs on, or I can click and drag to turn them all off, or like so, click and drag. There you go. I want to select all of them. There are multiple ways to do that. I can marquee select by just clicking here and dragging to select all 5, or I can go Control A in Windows, Command A in Mac, A standing for all, to select all of them. Or I can click on the first one and then shift click on the last one. Now they're all selected. I want to change them in some fashion. And this again will happen a lot. I'm going to talk about working with properties in many upcoming lessons. Right now I just want to change the scale manually. There's this bounding box around what appears to be just the top layer, but in fact it's a bounding box for all of the layers, more or less. So I'm going to grab a corner here and start changing it and bringing it down. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to constrain the proportions. You're going to notice that you're going to see the little Tiffany showing behind there because we changed its proportions, and now because we changed the proportions, it's behaving a little bit differently than the rest of them, but that's okay. We're just changing them all at once here. There you go. Now we're done. And now all these layers are still selected, but your task now is to deselect them. Your workflow frequently will be to select multiple layers, so it really is convenient to be able to deselect multiple layers easily. So F2 is a really great keyboard shortcut to do that. It's so commonly used. It's a very easy to remember keyboard shortcut. So F2 deselects all those layers. And now I want to move them around, so I can click on the top one there. That'll select the top one. I can move it. Click on the next one, I'll move it. Next one like so, next one like so. And perhaps I want the Tiffany glass now to be above them instead of below. I could take Tiffany glass here, select it, and move it to the top like that. Now it's on top. So right now we have these 5 layers in a 5-second comp, and I'd rather have them appear one at a time in a longer comp. So I want to change the length of the comp by right-clicking on it here, going to composition settings and changing this to 25 seconds. 5 times 5. Now they're still together here, and you really can't see that it's a 25-second comp because they're still zoomed out to 5 seconds. To zoom out all the way, hold down Shift semicolon. But if I do that now, nothing's going to happen because I need to make sure that the timeline is active. And right now the project panel is active. So I click down here, the timeline. Now you can see it's active with this orange border around it. Now I go Shift semicolon, you see all 25 seconds. You see that the guys are all bunched together here at the front. I want to change that by moving them off to the right. Now I could do that manually. I could take this one and slide it over, and take this one and slide it over, and try to line them up. And I'll show you a keyboard shortcut to make them snap. But right now, it's not really working the way I want it to work. So I'm going to do Controller Command Z to undo those two things. Instead, I'm going to use a lovely little menu command. I'm going to select all 5 of them. I'm going to select them from the bottom up, just to show you what happens when you select them in that order. So I'll click on the bottom one and Shift click on the top. And now I want to sequence them. And there's a menu command to do that, but it's tucked away in the strangest darn place. So I'm going to right click here to do a context menu. And under Keyframe Assistant of all places, there's something called Sequence Layers. Why it's there, I don't know, but we're going to click on that. We're going to get this message. Should we overlap the layers a certain amount? I'm going to say no, because that usually means we want to add a transition, and we're not really talking about transitions here. So I'll just click OK, and there they are, from bottom to top. This one will be first, even though it's on the bottom. That's because that's the order I selected it in. So now it's going to go like that, to that, to that, to that, to that. Okay, that's pretty cool, pretty easy. But let me show you another way to do this. We're going to do it from the beginning this time. I'm going to select all 5 of these images again, click on the top one, Shift click on the 5th one, and right click here and say New Comp from Selection, which was the same kind of a process as if I dragged it down to the little icon there. So I click on that, get this dialog box again, and this time I'm going to say Sequence the layers. Don't overlap them, just sequence them, and click OK. There we go. Now it's going to be in that order, but there they are, all lined up again, one after the other. Of course, they're another full frame. Except these guys need to be adjusted if we want to change them to fit the comp. But there you go. That's an easy way to sequence layers. Now let's say I want to move them around. I don't want this one to be first. I want it to go a little bit later. So I'm going to slide it over so it lines up with this one. Then I'll slide this one over. I need to deselect all 5 layers before I do that, or I'll move all 5 at once. Don't want to do that. So deselect layers, remember the shortcut key for that? It's F2, that famous keyboard shortcut to deselect the layers. There we go. Take this first one, just grab it. Now I want to move it to the right. If I try to eyeball it, it's kind of hard to line it up there. But if after I start moving it, I hold on the Shift key, then it's going to try to snap to the first edit point it sees, or the current time indicator, or the end or the beginning of the composition. It'll snap to something. So I hold on the Shift key, and now when I move it, it's going to snap. See how it snaps there? It goes whap, it snaps there. So it snaps into place there because it saw this other edit point. Now I want to take this one and take it to the left and have it snap to the beginning. Right now it's not going to snap there. But if I hold down the Shift key again, when it gets to the beginning, it snaps. Boom, snaps. So that's how you can move things around and have them line up by using the Snap tool, which is the Shift key here. I want to move something so it lines up with the current time indicator. So I got this guy here, and I want to line it up to that. So if I start moving it, it won't snap. But as I get around it, I hold on the Shift key, and then it will snap right to it like that. It's one of the cool uses of the Snap tool, just the Shift key being your shortcut for the Snap tool. Okay, I want to talk about working with some other files now. I'm going to trim some files, so we're going to do that with the video files. Start off by just taking this bicycles clip here and making a new comp from it. So I'm going to drag it down to the new comp icon there. Make a comp called bicycles. And there it is, and the comp is 24 seconds long, equaling the length of that particular clip right there, 24 in 1 frame. But I want to trim this. I don't want to have it start there. I want to have it start, let's say, right there when the children are a little bit closer. You can trim clips easily by just taking your cursor until you get the double arrow there and just dragging it like that. And it'll trim like that. It won't snap unless you hold on the Shift key. So here you go. It'll snap like that. But now it's going to be just an empty space there where the clip used to be. So I want to bring this to the beginning of the comp by dragging it toward the comp like that until it snaps to the beginning. Well, it won't snap automatically. You got to hold on the Shift key and then boom, it snaps. Now we got those guys coming on right there. Let's have this thing trim here. I'm going to change this view from adaptive to draft, fast draft like that. A little bit smoother looking. And right about there, we'll trim to there. So I'm going to take this and trim it. Now, again, it'll trim to the current time indicator if I hold on the Shift key. Boom, there we go. Now I want to add another clip there. So we'll take the dirt bikes clip and add it. If I add it below it, it's just going to sit there being covered up by that clip. So I want to extend it to the right a bit, but our timeline is not long enough. Our comp is only 24 seconds long, and this dirt bike clip is 48 seconds. And heck, we want to start after it anyways. So let's figure out a way to deal with that. by going to the bicycles comp, right-clicking, going composition settings. We'll change this from 24 seconds, let's say 2 minutes, just to kind of play it safe there. 0, 0, 0, 0. Now I've got plenty of time, but I can't see it. So again, I click on the timeline to make sure it's active and then go Shift, semicolon. Now I can see everything. I'm going to bring it all the way to the right because I'm not sure where I want to trim yet. So I'm going to go here. Let's say we'll start trimming right there, we'll say. So I'll trim to that point, holding on the Shift key. Boom. Go a little bit farther here. Let's say right about there. Hold on the Shift key again. Now I want to line this guy up. If I move it around here, I want to make sure these guys line up. So one thing I can do here is just hold on the Shift key again and boom, there we go. There are other keyboard shortcuts, but I just find that using the Shift key makes life pretty easy. Now I want to pre-trim a clip before I add it to the timeline, and you do that in the footage panel. And I'm going to double click on surfing, which will open that up in the footage panel. There it is. And now I want to trim surfing before I add it to this comp. So let me just move in here a little ways and kind of take a look at that. I think right before he starts heading up the wave there is where I'm going to have that in point. This is the in point and the out point. I'm going to click here to set the in point. There we go. You can see it there by the blue, the aqua. A little bit farther till he kind of finishes off the top of the wave. There we go. And we'll set that as the out point. So now we've got this thing all selected, and I want to add it to the comp. There are two buttons to do that. There's something called a ripple insert and something called an overlay. Ripple insert will split something wherever you got the current time indicator and stick it there. I find it easier to use the overlay. It's a little more intuitive. And the overlay will put it wherever the current time indicator is and put it on top. So if I click that, it's going to add a layer on top here and put the endpoint right where the current time indicator was, which is fine. We can move it later and have it line up. We can also move the layer here and have that line up. But I'm going to do Control or Command Z to undo that. I'm going to put the current time indicator where it belongs. I'll drag it over here till it gets to that little edit point. They're holding the Shift key, and there it's the edit point. And in fact, if I zoom in on this by pressing the semicolon, you'll see that I'm not really where I want the current time indicator to be. I'm actually one frame before where I want it to be. This is kind of a little thing about After Effects. In Premiere Pro, if you went to the end of a clip, it would actually be at the end of the clip, meaning the beginning of the next clip. Here, it's actually at the beginning of the last frame, which is a little confusing, but that's how After Effects works. So I want to actually be at the end of the last frame. And to do that, I need to go one frame forward. And the way I go one frame forward is pressing the page down key, one frame. Page up goes one frame, page down goes one frame. Now our current time indicator is where we want it to be. I'm going to zoom back out by pressing the Shift semicolon. There we go. So you can see things a little bit better. It looks like we've got nothing here, but we're going to add a clip there, and there will not be a blank space when after the add the clip. So I'll go up here. I want to click on this overlay. It's going to put it above this layer, which is fine for the time being. There we go. If I play this, there won't be any like black suddenly appearing because we actually put them one right after the other. There we go. Just a little thing about After Effects that's different than working with video editing if you've worked with video editors. Now, just in case I want them to go from top to bottom, I can take this one and move it like that. It won't affect the playback. It just affects the display here. There you go. So there you go. That's just a basic rundown on how you can manage and trim layers in the timeline and in the footage panel.